Exposed: How a dying billionaire found an unexpected heir and an incredible romance that transformed his life. Jack Hollister sat in his opulent penthouse, the San Francisco skyline a stark reminder of the empire he once ruled. Glancing around at the gleaming surfaces and lavish decor, an irritable pang shot through him. Each trophy told a tale of conquest, but now they seemed to muck his crumbling reality. A titan of the tech industry, reduced to a frail shadow, grappling with terminal illness and consuming regret. His empire was gone, but what gnawed at him most was the chasm between him and his estranged daughter. The bitterness of time and misunderstandings had carved deep scars. What kind of legacy was this? A billionaire's fall from grace, accompanied by the haunting absence of family. He often found himself on the verge of a breakthrough, but a deep-seated anxiety always halted him just short of the finish line. Who was he without his company, his wealth? Regret coiled tightly in his chest. Should he attempt to reach out to her now? A relationship that had long since been closed off? He feared exposure, not of his financial failures, but of the hollowness left behind by a lifetime of ambition pushed above family. Jack's phone rang, slicing through his deteriorating thoughts. A name flashed on the screen. A stranger claiming to have news about a daughter he thought lost to time. Before he even lifted the receiver, an uncomfortable thought stabbed him. What if this was true? Could Lucy, just a name on paper, actually be standing on the precipice of his devastation? A genetic link didn't guarantee connection. What if she shunned him like his real daughter? A race against time surged through his veins as the call ended. The uncertainty could consume him or resurrect him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. He decided to seek Lucy out, driven by desperation and an unquenchable thirst for connection. What kind of relationship could they build? Would they share the same passions? Would she resent the weight of his legacy, like his own daughter did? Each question spiraled into a storm of doubt within him. Jack should have felt a flicker of excitement, but dread tightened his throat like a noose rather than an embrace. What would he tell her? How could a billionaire with a dying ticker draw close to a waitress hardly scraping by? The thought was both terrifying and liberating. Would she view him as a stranger or a potential confidant?
The moment he approached the diner where Lucy worked, dread laced with an electric current pulsed through him. Would she see in him the man who had lost everything? As he stepped into the grimy establishment, the bustle around him turned muted. Jack could only focus on one thing: her. A wave of vulnerability cascaded over him. The facade of control he'd built began to crack. Behind those eyes, what fear lay dormant, waiting to be unearthed? And as he caught her gaze across the room, the sense of impending collision loomed heavier in the air. Would the secrets etched in their shared blood redeem or further entrap them? Jack stood frozen in the doorway, an involuntary weariness enveloping him. He hadn't imagined it would feel like this, entering a world so fundamentally different from his own. The diner hummed with an ordinary rhythm, laughter and clinking dishes forming an unremarkable backdrop to his life-altering decision. Yet within that familiar noise, Lucy sat behind the counter, her hands methodically wiping a glass, emblematic of the hard work and resilience he had long abandoned. He felt the weight of his past pressing down, a suffocating reminder of choices made and paths not taken. It became clear that this moment wasn't just about Lucy. It was also a bitter reckoning with himself. He had always prided himself on strength, on being a decision-maker, but now he was acutely aware of the exposed vulnerability of his circumstances. He hesitated, grappling with the impulse to either retreat or confront. Lucy, he finally managed, the name slipping from his lips as if testing its weight. Her eyes, initially glazed with the focus of mundane tasks, instantly flicked to him. Recognition was a flicker before a veil of confusion clouded her expression. In that fleeting moment, could she see past the insignia of his wealth and privilege? Did she perceive him merely as the frail man before her, rather than the billionaire memory she likely associated with his name? The silence stretched long and taut, echoing the uncertainty that saturated the air. "Can I help you?" she asked finally, her voice steady but laced with curiosity and caution. Jack's heart raced as he searched for a way to introduce himself, accustomed to being the one in control, the one who dictated terms. Yes, I'm Jack Hollister." He could feel each word scraping against his throat, a reminder of the shame woven into the truth of who he was. "Jack Hollister?" she repeated, skepticism etched across her features. The sound of her voice calling his name sent a tremor through him, as if she were testing the resonance of what was, in fact, no longer true. "What if I told you I'm looking for a connection?" The words tumbled out, and he cringed at their simplicity. But they were true. His own need for connection had outpaced his fear. He was reaching into the uncharted waters of vulnerability.
Lucy narrowed her gaze, skepticism shifting into something more complex, a mix of intrigue and wariness. Jack felt the palpable tension between them. He was teetering on the edge of revelations. His life was no longer encapsulated merely by financial statements and business deals. At this moment, in this cafe filled with the scent of burnt coffee and frying bacon, he longed to dismantle the barriers he had built around himself. "Why here? Why now?" she shot back, her chin raised in defiance. Each question felt like a stab, unearthing the layers of his carefully curated defenses. "Because I've lost too much," he admitted, confronted by the fissures in his own life, "and I want to find what I've missed." He could sense her hesitation in the way her body shifted slightly, as if she were balancing the weight of her own experiences against his declaration. What could he possibly offer her that would bridge their seemingly unbridgeable chasm? As the din of the diner surrounded them, his heart raced. This wasn't just about her. It was about him confronting the consequences of his choices, the loneliness of his rise, and the realization that personal connection mattered more than all the wealth he had amassed. Then, a flicker of recognition sparked in her eyes, igniting something deeper within him. The ghost of possibility arose, tempting him with the notion that perhaps, within their shared blood, lay the potential for redemption and understanding. "Let's talk," she finally said, shaky but determined. Her voice, resolute yet uncertain, signaled something new, an opening, perhaps, to a relationship he never thought he could have. Jack's resolve deepened. He would fight for this as fiercely as he once fought for his empire. But as they settled into a booth, the enormity of what lay ahead weighed upon him. Would she truly listen? Or would the burdens of their past derail any chance of a future together? As Jack prepared to reveal truths long buried within himself, the uncharted territory ahead stretched out ominously. The moment of confrontation had arrived, but at what cost? As Jack slid into the booth across from Lucy, the familiar sounds of the diner faded into a soft background hum, overshadowed by the torrent of thoughts raging in his mind. This was not just a conversation. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, contemplating a jump into the unknown. In this vulnerable state, he could sense the duality of their encounter, not only the potential for connection, but also the risk of further alienation. Lucy's eyes, still wary, bore into him. "You wanted to connect, Jack, but what do you really mean by that?" The question hung heavy in the air, laden with skepticism and hope. Taking a deep breath, Jack reminded himself that there was no script to follow, no boardroom playbook that could guide him through this emotional terrain. "I've spent my life building walls," he said, his voice steadier than he felt.
"Focusing on my company, my wealth, it's made me successful, but it's also left me isolated. I realized too late that I was never truly living." Her expression softened, if only for a fleeting moment. It gave him the courage to continue. "Losing my family, my connection to my roots, has been devastating. I need to rediscover what it means to be a part of something, to feel seen beyond the mask of my riches." Alice considered his words, a calculated maneuvering brewing in her mind. The diner seemed to thrum with life, yet they were encapsulated in a fragile bubble, the noise outside a mere whisper. "You think I'm going to fill that void for you?" she challenged him. "No," he answered quickly, shaking his head. "I'm not asking you to. I just want to understand my past, to understand you. I need to reach out beyond finance and power. And I think you can help me." Her gaze flickered with recognition, a silent acknowledgement of shared struggle. But beneath it lay a battle of reluctance. Jack could see the inner conflict etched on her face. Did she want to trust this man she had once only known as a distant figure of fortune and despair? He recognized that her wariness mirrored his own. Jack narrowed his focus, choosing his words carefully, praying he could resonate with Lucy's deeper desires. It's not just about me anymore, Lucy. For a long time, I defined myself by my success. But what does that mean when there's no one to share it with? You have a life, stories, dreams of your own. Maybe we could learn from each other. The challenge was immense. Jack fought against the urge to resort to the persuasive language of corporate speak, recognizing the need for authenticity in this moment. Each vulnerable admission was a step closer to the connection he craved, yet also a perilous gamble. Lucy's brow furrowed as she toyed with the glass cloth in her hands. You don't know much about me, Jack. I'm just someone who has the power to help me discover who I really am, he interrupted gently. Your family. Whatever our history or differences, we share blood. That matters. He saw a mix of surprise and uncertainty flicker in her eyes. He was striking a note he hadn't dared to hope would resonate. But as Jack briefly glimpsed the walls of Lucy's guarded heart shudder, he knew he was on the precipice of either transformation or catastrophe. The truth is, Jack began, only to be interrupted by a commotion outside the diner. A loud argument broke out, voices raised, the rhetoric of anger, disbelief, and frustration filtering through the glass. It crashed through their moment, effectively shattering the fragile atmosphere built between them. Lucy's hesitance re-entered as she turned her attention to the scene outside. Jack clenched a fist under the table, the urgency of their meeting dismantled by the chaos abruptly invading their space. He wouldn't let this derail them. He needed to keep pushing forward.
Lucy, he said, lifting her gaze back to him. I know there's a storm approaching, and it's bigger than just this moment, but the time has come to face those storms, whatever they may be. In that moment, Jack realized that confronting the emotional tempest of his life required more than just willingness. It required action. And as he steadied himself, anticipation met anxiety in a potent cocktail of fear and hope. Yet here, amidst the chaos, an entirely new storm brewed inside him, a revelation that perhaps the journey of finding connection was only the beginning of much larger battles yet to be faced. Jack leaned closer, his heart racing. Can we navigate this together? Will you show me what I've been missing? In that moment, everything hung in the balance. Jack's words hung in the air, wrapping around them like vines seeking purchase. For a fleeting moment, the ruckus outside dissipated into a background murmur. His breath hitched with anticipation, hoping for Lucy to finally take a step toward him, to breach the gulf that had kept them apart for so long. Her brows knitted, a visible barricade against his pleas. You think everything can just change like that? One conversation in a booth? She challenged, her voice low but firm, underlining her incredulity with a hint of hurt. No, I don't expect it to be easy, but maybe this is a start, Jack replied, rustling his impatience. He could feel the walls threatening to rise again, both within himself and Lucy. This was a critical juncture, and he couldn't afford to spin into doubt now. You say you've built walls, but trust takes time to cultivate, Jack. Her tone softened, yet the determination behind it remained palpable, like a stubborn ember refusing to extinguish. Jack leaned back, absorbing the weight of her words. It was true. He had neglected so much beyond the constructs of his empire. I understand that. I really do. But I'm willing to put in the work. I've understood my shortcomings too late, and I don't want to repeat that mistake. Time is a luxury I can no longer afford. Lucy studied him through narrow eyes, still skeptical but visibly moving closer to a decision. And what makes you think you deserve any of this? A second chance. Her directness stung, but it opened a door. He had spent years avoiding vulnerability, but now it surged within him, propelled by an urgency he had never felt before. Because I can't keep living in the shadow of my own making. I want to be more than my past mistakes. Silence briefly enveloped them. It was a moment of introspection for both, marred only by the echoing chaos outside. Jack realized how far he had drifted from being the authentic version of himself. As quicksilver memories flooded his mind, faces of those he had lost, the laughter and love extinguished, he understood that he needed a lifeline. Imagine unearthing stories you've buried, sharing meals that mean something, and creating experiences together, he envisioned fervently.
I want the human connection I've denied myself, and knowledge of my roots can only pave the way. Lucy let out a hesitant sigh, and Jack seized the opportunity, sensing a crack in her defenses. And you, Lucy, you have your own dreams. They're not just tied to me, they're your maritime charts for discovery. He struggled to catch her gaze again, the connection essential to forge ahead. The stakes had risen, yet he was willing to risk it all. "Let's not waste this moment," he murmured, the storm inside him coiling tighter. "Let's simplify things. What would it look like to invite each other into our lives, to explore truths untold?" He held his breath, anxiety colliding with hope as he awaited her response. The air was thick, fraught with tension, and their surroundings were a mere backdrop to the emotional battleground they had entered. "The truth is, I don't trust you," Lucy finally confessed, each word a blade slicing through the ambiguity. "And I can't just expect to simply open up. It's not that straightforward." Jack felt a pang, not of anger, but of profound understanding. "I don't want to rush you," he said earnestly, "but trust can build like a bridge, one plank at a time. Just give me a chance to prove myself. We can take our time." The clash of voices outside surged once more, a reminder of the unpredictability they were both entangled in. Just as he feared a retreat in her demeanor, she took a moment to assess him, her internal battle playing out visibly on her face. Jack sensed an impatience creeping back beneath his skin. He needed to act before the thread of connection unraveled. "Let this be our turning point, Lucy. I want to face the storm with you, not against you." Lucy maintained her silence, the moment suspended as each contemplated the depths of their uncertainty. She was grappling with her demons, and he could feel the fight in her. Instead of offering her a way out with another proposal, he leaned in, forces himself to embrace the vulnerable space. "Share one thing about you right now, something I don't know. Open that door just a crack." Her brows soared, surprised by his request. "You really think you can handle it?" she rebutted, the edge of defiance still audible. "I have to," Jack insisted, an electric rush of determination igniting his spirit. "If I want to build something real, I need to know the real you." The silence stuttered, thick with anticipation, as he braced himself for an answer that could either solidify their fragile bond or send them spiraling into disconnection once more. Lucy's gaze bore into Jack, a mixture of intrigue and wariness shimmering in her eyes. The silence stretched like a taut rope, a battle between past experience and the tantalizing possibility of connection. She shifted, visibly weighing her next words. Jack could feel the pulse of something momentous building in the stillness. "Fine," she finally said, her voice steady but laced with caution.
"I'll share, but don't expect it to be some grand revelation. It's complicated." Jack nodded, urging her on, hopeful for any glimmer of trust she would bestow upon him. He'd been holding various pieces of himself back for too long. It was time to start loosening those tightly wound coils. "I almost went into marine biology," Lucy confessed, her fingers drumming on the table's edge. "I used to spend my summers researching coral reefs and their ecosystems. I thought maybe one day I could make a real difference. But when life hit, I focused on my family business instead." Jack's heart raced with both empathy and admiration. "That's incredible. You should still pursue that," he encouraged, visioning a life where she could reclaim this passion that had once burned brightly. "Maybe," she replied tightly, as if wanting to close off this topic. Jack noted the quick, defensive backlash. The more she revealed, the more she seemed to recoil. Let me be honest," he said, leaning forward, tempering his enthusiasm. "I want to know not just what your dreams were, but what you want now. What's holding you back?" She had disarmed him. Now he sought to reciprocate that vulnerability, not realizing that the act of peeling away the layers would reveal wounds of their own. "It's not that simple, Jack. Every decision I make weighs on my family's legacy. I can't just chase after a childhood fantasy when there's so much on the line. What if I fail?" Her voice trembled slightly as vulnerability edged into her anxiety. His resolve solidified. "What if you succeed?" Jack considered her for a heartbeat before continuing. "Sometimes moving forward requires unpacking the baggage others handed us. This is your life. I can't define your choices. I can only support you." A flicker of surprise crossed Lucy's face, and for the first time it seemed she might truly let him in. He sensed that the moment had shifted. She was at a crossroads, and he stood on a precipice alongside her. "Okay," she said, her tone softer now. "But you have to do the same. What dreams did you bury, Jack?" He inhaled deeply. It was his turn to reveal himself. "Before I threw myself into the world of high-stakes deals and social status, I wanted to be an architect. I envisioned creating spaces that inspired connection and community." He hesitated, feeling the tremors of regret surfacing. "But instead, I built walls." Lucy's expression morphed into contemplation, her barriers less pronounced now. "Walls," she echoed, her voice thoughtful. "And what about now? Where do you envision yourself going?" "I'm learning," he admitted,
feeling the weight of honesty shift in the air. Each moment with you reminds me of what I've sacrificed. I want to be part of something real again, to reconnect with who I am beneath the expectations and fears. As he spoke, Jack could see something igniting in Lucy's eyes, a light of possibility that had been dimmed for far too long.
"Perhaps we can explore these roads together," he added, summoning every ounce of conviction he could muster. "But it's going to take time, patience, and a whole lot of trust building." "I don't know if we can go there yet," Lucy replied tentatively, her openness cautiously approaching fragility. "There are still shadows lurking." Every word hit Jack like a pebble skipped across the surface of still water, a ripple that expanded with each confession. "Then let's face them," he declared, adrenaline mixing with a desperate hope. "Together." Just as she seemed ready to respond, an explosive burst of noise erupted from outside, rattling the booth. It filtered through the cafe like a wave crashing against the shore, startling them both into stillness. Jack's heart sank. The fragility of their connection felt threatened by the chaos of the world beyond this moment. "Let's not let the noise drown us," he urged, watching her eyes flicker with uncertainty. "We owe it to ourselves to break past the chaos. Let this be our turning point, but only if you want it." Lucy's brow furrowed, the weight of decision heavy in the air, but before she could address the unspoken question, a man charged inside, his urgency palpable, pulling them back into the messy reality they had tried to escape. Jack's stomach churned at the sight of Ethan, a business associate he'd known for years. Ethan's disheveled hair and strained expression were out of character, a rift in the usually polished demeanor Jack relied on for keeping up appearances. The interlude of their conversation felt suspended in time, a fragile moment of honesty now shattering at the entrance to chaos. "Not now, Ethan," he implored, his voice steady but edged with urgency. He shifted his gaze toward Lucy, desperate to cling to the connection they had only begun to build. "We need to talk," Ethan insisted, his voice taut. "It's about the merger and the consequences of what we're facing. We have a real crisis." Jack's mind raced as he processed Ethan's words, the industry and its demands closing in on him like a vice. He'd spent years constructing a reputation, establishing a network that called for quick decision-making and unyielding resolve. But now, here, with Lucy, he had barely scratched the surface of his emotions, the dawning awareness of their importance threatening to dissipate. "Can't it wait?" he found himself asking, torn between his professional obligations and the undeniable pull of this newfound vulnerability with Lucy. "No, it can't," Ethan replied, his urgency mounting. "They've found out. Your father's company. Things might unravel if we don't act decisively. I know this isn't what you want to deal with right now, but it's serious." The implications of Ethan's words struck a chord deep within Jack. The legacy he'd worked to uphold was now at risk. Shifting focus to that reality brought back the familiar bitterness of his past, the weight of expectation, the pressure to steer his family's ship. As he took a breath, he felt the urge to run back to Lucy, to explore more of what they had unearthed together, far removed from the icy encasement of boardroom battles and administrative pressures. "Jack, it's okay if you need to go," Lucy's voice broke through the fray of his thoughts, laced with understanding, yet tinged with disappointment. She sat back, a shadow crossing her features as if she too felt the pull of lost opportunities. "I really don't want to leave this," he admitted, the raw honesty spilling over, nudging him closer to a pivotal decision. This openness was not something he easily granted others, certainly not in his world of cutthroat negotiations, where personal frailty equaled weakness. Yet here it felt necessary. "Jack, sometimes being a leader means knowing when to prioritize," Lucy pressed, her eyes flickering with some untold wisdom. "This merger, it's bigger than you or me, but what you're doing here, this conversation, it matters too." He was torn. The weight of both choices crashed against him, demanding an answer that felt monumental. The words stammered in his throat, coiling around the realization that every time he failed to confront his true desires, he built another wall. Even the thought of abandoning Lucy left a bitter taste. Proximity mattered in more than just business. "Just remember, it's your legacy too," Lucy said softly, grounding him in her steadfast gaze, despite the rising tumult outside the cafe. Jack glanced at Ethan, whose impatience morphed into a hard gaze. Distraction would not help him here, only postponing the inevitable confrontation he'd been avoiding. He weighed the significance of both worlds, his internal conflict reaching a terra incognita.
But that nagging doubt echoed in Jack's mind. What propelled him to choose the path best laid by others all this time? There was a flicker of clarity that came with chaos, a dawning chance to redefine the legacy he'd been tied to. Standing firm with Lucy seemed less like an indulgence and more a revolution of sorts. "I'll deal with it," he finally stated, his voice firm. "I'm not running this time." Ethan hesitated, caught off guard by Jack's unexpected defiance. "What do you mean?" "It means I've made my choice," Jack replied, reclaiming his agency with determination. Behind that choice lurked the seeds of self-discovery, a pivotal step in laying the groundwork for genuine progress. As Jack sifted through his decisions, he felt Lucy's gaze envelop him like a warm cocoon, fortifying his conviction. Would they unravel the shadows together, or would the external forces draw him back into old patterns? Amid the brewing chaos, a deeper understanding began to anchor him. Ethan's eyes brooded, disapproval simmering just beneath the surface, pulling Jack back into the frustrating reality of his career.
"This isn't just about you anymore," Ethan stressed, leaving Jack wondering how he could steer the ship toward meaningful change while trying to stay afloat in his turbulent professional waters. In that moment of decision, a new wave of doubt washed over him. The question loomed: was he ready to fully embrace this shift in his life, or would he let the past dictate his future yet again? Jack inhaled, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. But amidst the unfolding tension, he couldn't shake a troubling thought. What if the shadows didn't just linger? What if they were ready to pounce? Jack stepped away from the table, steeling himself against the piercing stare of Ethan, who seemed to radiate a pressure that squeezed the air from his lungs. Each breath felt heavy with the weight of expectation, a palpable reminder of what was at stake. He needed to resolve the chaos, not just for the business, but for himself. "Let's talk," Jack conceded, swallowing hard as he turned his attention from Lucy and faced Ethan's tense frame. But not here. Initial uncertainty crested within him, battling the newfound resolve. Every instinct screamed at him to return to Lucy, to explore their conversation further, to allow that connection to bloom rather than be stifled beneath crisis. Yet professional training kicked in, the learned responses honed over years of grappling with cutthroat decisions driving him forward. Ethan followed Jack outside, where the cacophony of city life pulsed through the air, horns honking, voices blending into a symphony of urgency. Jack found a quiet corner, signifying a need for refuge in this whirlwind. He didn't want the world's weight on his shoulders. He wanted authenticity, a break from the well-rehearsed lines of corporate theater. "All right," Ethan said, running a hand through his unruly hair. "The deal is on shaky ground because of the leverage the other team has found. They're aware of your past, Jack. They might exploit it." Jack's pulse quickened. Memories of his father's empire swept through him, portraying a legacy he both cherished and resented. "What do you mean they know? Rumors about your father's company aren't just whispered in boardrooms. They've reached investors, and they always have their radar. If we don't maneuver quickly, it could spiral out of control. This goes further than finances. It threatens your name and the company's future." Ethan's concern was palpable, a stark contrast to the urgency Jack felt while being with Lucy. Jack stepped back mentally, the conversation circling in his head, an unsettling dissonance between two sides of himself. He knew it was time to confront the ghosts that had shackled him, his father's expectations, the burdens of legacy. "I can't let them dictate my path," Jack replied, his voice gaining strength as clarity surged within. His heart raced not just from fear, but from a growing sense of empowerment. It was no longer about moral obligations. It was about rewriting his narrative, reclaiming control over his life. But then clarity shifted to doubt. What if they leverage my past? What if they reveal the fractures in his family's facade? Could he stand firm if the truth laid bare his father's prized possessions, an empire built on fraught foundations? Ethan could sense Jack's conflict and pressed. "But if you don't act first, they will. We need to conduct damage control, and fast." Jack's thoughts danced between the chaos of the corporate world and the warmth of the cafe where Lucy had offered him connection. Taking a deep breath, he thought of her calm, her support. Laying it all on the table might not only protect his legacy, but could redefine what that legacy meant. "What are our best options?" he inquired, narrowing his concentration on the professional route. Ethan suggested a public relations strategy, but Jack felt the urgency merge with caution. Each decision would resonate, echoing beyond business stakes, training him to center himself amidst turmoil. "I won't skirt around my past," he asserted, driven by a profound need to embrace everything he had avoided for so long. "We need transparency. I have to address this as I face it, not hide behind it." Ethan's surprised expression shifted to admiration. "Then let's do it. But we need a plan and the right allies. Your voice carries, but it needs to echo strength." Jack nodded in understanding, the gears in his mind churning. This was no longer just about saving face. It was about confrontation and growth. He needed allies, not just in business, but people who understood the complexities of human emotion behind the facade of a leader. "Let's find ways to prepare for the fallout. I have a sense I have more help than I realize." As they stepped back into the busy flow of the street, Jack felt fortitude build within him like an unyielding tide. The stakes were high, yet he felt empowered, not despite his weaknesses, but because they were now a part of his narrative. He stole a glance back toward the cafe where Lucy remained, a beacon. The notion of vulnerability was growing less daunting each moment. He would not face this upheaval alone, nor would he merely be defined by his lineage. But deep within him, a quiet question lingered. Was he ready to lay bare both his triumphs and failures? The revelation of this openness loomed, heralding an inevitable reckoning on the horizon. The moment had arrived, yet with it surged the realization that the next phase would demand every ounce of courage he could muster. Determined, he stepped forward, knowing that this was just the beginning. The time had come to weigh the costs of honesty against the rewards of genuine connection. Would he dare to expose not just the failures of his family, but his own hidden depths? Stepping into the office the next morning, Jack felt an unusual tremor of confidence mingled with trepidation. The familiar scent of coffee and polished wood swept over him, but today it seemed changed, charged with a different purpose. He was no longer just a man shackled by expectation. He was a vessel ready to face the storm brewing, both within and outside the company walls. He made his way to his office with intention, the weight of the previous day's conversation with Ethan still reverberating in his mind. Every step was a reminder of the decision he had made, to confront the whispering shadows of his past instead of letting them dictate his future. But nerves bubbled beneath the surface of his resolve. What if he exposed too much? What if his honesty did more harm than good? As he settled into his chair, Jack opened his laptop, the screen illuminating the path of emails that had piled up overnight. Each one felt like a reminder of the operational chaos awaiting resolution, yet he knew he had to prioritize rebuilding his own foundation first. He clicked through each message, pausing only at the ones from Ethan detailing strategies for damage control. There, nestled among the corporate jargon, lay a clear line of action, a press conference. The mere thought sent a ripple of panic through him. "Jack?" Ethan's voice broke through his concentration. He was standing in the doorway, his expression a mix of concern and determination. "Are you ready for this?" Jack took a breath, the weight of his past pressing hard against him. "What if they don't just attack the company? What if they dig into my family? I can't let them make me a sensational piece for the tabloids," he replied, his voice trembling with some of his old fears. Ethan walked further into the office, closing the door behind him. "This is exactly why we need to be proactive. If you go out there and stand firm, transparency can be your armor. The truth might not be pretty, but hiding from it will only fuel the rumors. You could turn this around, use it as a catalyst." There it was again, that echo of the decisions he had to make, every second intertwined with the staggering realization of what it meant to be truly exposed. It wasn't just about his family legacy, but about who he was as an individual. Slowly, the fog of doubt began to clear. "So, we move forward with the press conference?" "Yes," Ethan affirmed, his voice steady. "But we craft your narrative. Focus on the vision for the future instead of dwelling on the past. It's about how you want to be seen." A bold idea sprang to life in Jack's mind. "And I could incorporate my experience. Use my father's story to illustrate the lessons I've learned." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That's a powerful angle. It shows you're not just a product of nepotism. You've grown, adapted, and are willing to face the music." A thrill of excitement began threading its way through Jack's uncertainty. He'd always seen his father as the architect of his insecurities, but perhaps he could also draw strength from those very experiences. What if his father's mistakes became stepping stones in his own narrative? "Let's develop a plan. I need my story to resonate, not just be a dull recounting of family history," Jack said, feeling a spark of urgency igniting within him. "Let's meet with PR, brainstorm ways to frame this in a way that emphasizes growth and resilience." Ethan grinned, seeing the determination shift in Jack. That's the spirit. And maybe we can integrate engagement with our client base about this. Show that you're building a more transparent and sincere relationship. Nervously, Jack thought about Lucy's words from the cafe, the importance of connection. Suddenly, it felt crucial, not just for the business, but for his very identity. He had always concentrated on building walls to shield himself from scrutiny. Perhaps it was time to deconstruct them and rebuild with a solid foundation of honesty. Jack felt a wave of awareness wash over him, affirming that this rekindling of purpose was a journey not only for the company, but for himself. He was ready to confront the vulnerabilities of his past, and in doing so, he could lead with integrity. With each minute detail of the plan forming in his mind, something deeper stirred within Jack, a forgotten confidence, wrapped in the threads of self-acceptance. He was no longer just seeking redemption, he was aiming for authenticity. As they pinned down the last details for the conference, Jack felt the knot in his stomach transform into something more electrifying. He was about to confront not just his past and the rumors surrounding it, but the intricate layers of who he could become. Rolling up his sleeves, he met Ethan's gaze full force. After this, I want to continue speaking honestly. I won't just be a leader defined by my family's prestige, but as a man willing to grow and connect. Ethan nodded, impressed. Good. There's strength in vulnerability. The weight of what lay ahead loomed, but for the first time, Jack faced it with an exhilaration he hadn't expected. He was standing on the brink of a new narrative that could either symbolically shatter the remnants of an outdated legacy or reshape it into one of his own making. The conference drew near, but with each passing moment, he couldn't shake the creeping doubt of whether his story could truly resonate. How much should he share about the complexities of his upbringing? As the city outside bustled on, Jack felt deeply that change was coming, and with it, the probability of faceless adversaries at his doorstep. Yet, lurking in the shadows, another question emerged, gnawing at him. Would revealing the truth about his past bring him the freedom he craved, or merely lay him bare to brutal scrutiny? The stakes had never been higher, but neither had his resolve. As Jack looked out at the skyline, a mix of shadows and light, he felt an overwhelming desire to embrace every part of himself. He was preparing for a confrontation not just with the world, but with his very soul. Would he rise, or would he fall? The moment to find out was approaching fast, and none of it would go as planned. Jack arrived at the conference room, the atmosphere buzzing with anticipation. This was the moment he had been preparing for, yet a heavy weight rested on his chest. His team was gathered, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, echoing Jack's own inner turmoil. As he scanned the room, he recognized the importance of this gathering, not just for the company, but for his own personal evolution. "All right, everyone," he began, his voice steady but with an edge of vulnerability. "Today we're not just addressing the issues at hand. I need you to understand something deeper, why transparency matters to me and this company." The room fell silent, eyes fixed on him as he laid the framework of his narrative. Drawing from the depths of his past, he took a deep breath and pressed on. "My father was not just a successful businessman. He made choices that affected our family and led to great pain. For years, I felt the shadows of those mistakes overshadowing my own identity. Each word felt freeing, yet invasive, peeling back the layers he had spent so long concealing. People's expressions shifted from curiosity to empathy, seeing him as more than just a face of the company. Jack recounted his father's reckless decisions, the chaos they wreaked, and how those moments had shaped his understanding of leadership. What I learned is that true leadership is not about maintaining an image of perfection. It's about embracing the flaws, learning from them, and building something authentic from the ruins. It's about connection." The verb resonated deeply. He could feel the walls he had built around himself slowly crumbling. With each revelation, a subtle shift occurred in the room. He could sense the quiet admiration mixed with recognition from his colleagues. It was a risk to expose his vulnerabilities, yet the air felt charged, almost liberatingly. Voices inside his head screamed caution, but the strength of his resolve shushed them. He was no longer merely a product of his past, but someone who recognized the power of sincere engagement. Feedback began swirling in the room. His colleagues echoed his sentiments, some sharing their vulnerabilities, their struggles with personal failures. This was the catharsis he hadn't anticipated.
In this space, he discovered that vulnerability ignited connection. It was not a weakness, but a rallying point. The subtle transmutation from individual insecurities into collective strength lit a fire in him. After discussing strategic communications, the atmosphere shifted back towards the impending public conference. Jack felt the weight of the approaching scrutiny, but something unexpected swelled within him, a fierce determination to remain authentic regardless of the judgment.
He felt seen for the first time, not just as Jack, the heir, but as Jack, the man, willing to fight through the noise and speak his truth. Today, let's craft our message around integrity, resilience, and the importance of connection, he concluded, his heart racing. These values aren't just buzzwords. They need to resonate out there, reflecting who we are as a company moving forward. I want everyone to feel part of this journey. The room erupted in applause. Their unity felt tangible. As they moved to wrap up the meeting, questions still skittered in his mind, laced with urgency. Would their story be understood? Could they truly change the narrative that had threatened to undo everything? Deep down, he realized that standing at this precipice foreshadowed a confrontation not just with the external world, but also within himself. Moments later, as Jack sought solace in a quiet corner of the room, doubt crept back in. Would the media's ruthless scrutiny overshadow his authentic intentions? Realization swept over him. The path he was taking was fraught with uncertainty, but clarity was emerging from the shadows. He would navigate this storm with transparency, and perhaps it would lead to a more profound transformation than he had even dared to imagine. Jack leaned against the wall, closing his eyes, feeling the weight of expectation heavy upon him. The conference was only the beginning, a stage to reveal his newfound self, yet he knew deeper confrontations awaited. The looming question remained: how would the world respond to his truth? He opened his eyes, glancing once more toward the buzzing conference room. The chase towards authenticity had started, but would it hold? The moment of reckoning was gaining momentum, and the implications could either bring liberation or expose him to deeper vulnerabilities than he had anticipated. Facing the forthcoming battle felt daunting, and uncertainty blended with determination. Nevertheless, he understood he was ready, or at least he had to be. The question lingered in the air, tantalizing and terrifying. What awaited beyond this self-imposed threshold of truth? The answer pulsated just out of reach, waiting to be uncovered. Jack stood at the threshold of the conference room, heart pounding, a swirl of emotions cascading within him. This was his moment, a culmination of his transformative journey from billionaire heir to a man who had shed layers of fear, embracing the uncertain yet invigorating path of authenticity. As he faced the crowd, the weight of expectations pressed down upon him. Yet instead of anxiety, a solid confidence surged through Jack, reminiscent of the countless boardrooms he had once dominated. Only now he held the power of vulnerability, a stark contrast to the armor he had worn for so many years. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady. "I wanted to take this opportunity to share something deeply personal and important." He recounted his father's choices, the shadows of his legacy threatening to engulf him. With each word, Jack could sense the reservations of his audience melting away, replaced by empathy. He was no longer just the headline figure of a tech titan. He was a man stripped bare of his titles, facing his reality head-on. "For too long, I allowed the weight of that legacy to define my choices," he admitted, letting fear dictate my actions, as opposed to embracing who truly am. "Today, I want to redefine that narrative. We are more than our past mistakes." A subtle murmuring rippled through the audience. His openness resonated deeply. The shifting dynamics in the room signaled that something genuine was forming. Jack continued, expressing that true leadership transcended the realm of power, intertwining humanity with connection. His previous life, dominated by financial empires, felt like a distant memory, a self-made prison, heavy with regret. "Since stepping into my vulnerability," he declared, "I've learned that connection to others is what truly matters. Each of you plays a vital role in this journey, not just as employees, but as collaborators in cultivating something meaningful." He felt invigorated, each word reinforcing his newfound identity. He was no longer only Jack Hollister. He was a man empowered by his choices and supported by the very people surrounding him. As he concluded, Jack looked out at the faces in the room, his team, his peers, who now reflected recognition and an awakening sparked by his truth.
Their applause reverberated through him like a chorus of affirmation. It was palpable. He had forged a connection, illustrating that his vulnerabilities had not diminished him, but rather unveiled a deeper strength. The press conference loomed, but he was ready for whatever challenges lay beyond that door. He felt a thrilling sense of liberation surging through him. No matter the reactions of the media or public scrutiny, he had already laid the groundwork for a more fulfilling journey. He wasn't just reclaiming his narrative, but transforming the story of every person in that room, inviting them to embark on their own paths of authenticity. As the day progressed, a palpable energy surrounded him. Ethan approached him, eyes lit with admiration. "Jack, you were incredible out there," he praised, sincerity evident in his tone. "Your shift in perspective is inspiring, not just for the company, but for your team as well. I've never seen this kind of engagement before." Jack smiled, recognition swelling within him. "Thank you, Ethan. But it's not just me. It's the commitment of everyone here to embrace vulnerability and connection." The feeling of camaraderie expanded in his chest, igniting a sense of purpose he hadn't known he possessed. Later that evening, Jack found himself at the diner where Lucy worked, the air filled with familiar aromas. As he crossed the threshold, he spotted her at the counter, eyes widening in delight. "You did it!"
Lucy exclaimed, a beam of admiration lighting her features. "Everyone's talking about your speech. You really took a risk." "I couldn't have done it without you," he confessed, stepping closer, vulnerability reminding him of his ongoing journey. "You made me realize the importance of facing my past. I found my voice because of the connection I was afraid to embrace. Thank you for that." Lucy's smile deepened, realizing the impact she unknowingly had on him. In that moment, the weight of their past misunderstandings melted away. Jack could see that their story was only just beginning, interwoven with both shared experiences and dreams yet to be realized. He reached out to take her hand, their fingers intertwining, sealing their resolve to navigate this journey together. "Let's build something real, Lucy. I want you to be part of this transformation, not just in the business, but in my life. You inspire me. No more walls between us." A spark ignited in Lucy's eyes as they shared the quiet promise of new beginnings, both personally and professionally. No longer just seeking redemption, Jack had discovered something far richer, a profound connection that could thrive when vulnerability was embraced. Jack's heart soared. He had conquered the challenges of his past, emerging renewed and emboldened. The weight of expectation felt lighter, and for the first time he recognized that his legacy wasn't just about wealth or power. It was about creating an authentic life enriched by meaningful relationships and connection. He had reclaimed his story and was ready to embrace the future that lay ahead, hand in hand with Lucy. This was his moment of triumph. The churning uncertainties faced that day became stepping stones towards solid confidence. Jack was not merely a transformed man, but a beacon of resilience, a testament to the culmination of individual growth and the journey to what it truly meant to live and connect. Now is the time for you to embrace your own journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.